Very extraordinary events happened recently on the East Coast, and I suppose you can share with us a lot of lessons you've learned when Sandy met the Weather Channel.
Yeah, well, uh, it's tragic, so there's no joy in it. But uh, Sandy was a big moment for us. And if you look at the company, we do three things. First, we have to predict the weather. Then we have to communicate it so people understand it. Then we have to analyze what it means to people and to businesses. So the first thing was the forecast. Um, and I would say our company did get it right. We
Better
do.
than others?
Yes, I think earlier than others and more precise than others. Some of it's our scale in that we have the Weather Channel. We've got several websites that all use the weather. We feed the weather to 2,000 other properties, and we feed the weather to most local television stations. So we've got a pretty broad range, all off one forecast. But before Sandy was Isaac, and we had this discussion about what was next. And this was 10 days before Sandy, and my head meteorologist, Dr. Peter Neely, said, David, I think this little dot, and they've got these maps, this little dot is going to come over, wipe out Haiti, move up the East Coast, probably cause some problems in Florida. And then, even though it's the end of October, and at this time the jet stream generally pushes things out, because we factored in climate change, because that's changed the jet stream, because the ridges are less profound, it's not going to be able to blow out. It's going to turn left somewhere around New York City.
10 days before.
And it's going to be really bad because the day it's going to cross is the day of high tide, and that's going to cause a problem. And then after that, David, it's going to become a blizzard. And in my shoes, you say, that's how we get a reputation for hype. Like, we can't say this is going to happen, that climate change is going to wipe out lower Manhattan. We agreed that we would say for the beginning, there were two scenarios, there were two models, one based on a model here in Europe, another based on an American model. The European model was more accurate. And then every day we tracked it. So by 4 days before, we were absolutely certain and beginning to have arguments about how to warn people. And I think we were way out in front of it.
So you're telling us that climate change is at the heart of your model, right? Predictive model. And although we didn't hear that word climate change during the campaign at all, how come?
I didn't run for office, so I have. What I won't do is scientifically say climate change caused this specific storm. What I will say is climate change has changed the atmosphere completely, and the reason I think weather is checked by half of all smartphone users every day is because it's less predictable. There are more changes, and some of that is that the climate has changed.
Okay, let's try to dip now a bit further into media and social media.
Oh yeah, it's the media forum.
And it's, I think, Monaco okay. Media Forum. But it's fascinating anyway that you are now able to predict weather like that. Now, I have also been trying to transform old media, in my case newspapers, and to adapt them to the social media and digital revolution. And it's extremely tough. So in your case, coming from a TV channel, how do you see your expansion into mobile and all the social apps and platforms? Is it easy to do? Where are you at the moment?
Yeah, so it's, in earlier discussions, Terry talked about the fact that TV economics are different than music, and they are. So our TV channel still has the most margin because they pay us distribution. So we're in every home in America. So the cable and the satellite people, they pay me so much per month per household.
Very good.
And I make advertising. I didn't hear Dailymotion offering to pay us, or YouTube offering to pay us, or Microsoft offering to pay us. So I think distribution is different in digital. And I think those economics slow things down. So we produce television programming, and it's exclusive to them. And we have to do other things on the other channels. They allow, because of our leadership in weather, that we do everything, but there is something we owe people who pay us hundreds of millions of dollars a year to carry the channel. So you've got to do that first, and I think TV's got to become more interesting because you can get the basic weather on a mobile device now or on your computer.
Okay, but as we know, and as we all experience every day now that we have a desktop at times, still old-fashioned, laptop, tablet, you know, how do you make sure, and this is a very key question for all media, whether they come from print or TV or radio, is how do you make that experience not only consistent but very coherent also, so that I feel that I get from you everything I get from you on each of these screens makes sense and is related to any other news feed I get from you.
Yeah, so I'm wary of matching luggage as a strategy because I think each environment is different. So we start with the forecast. So our science is the same. We won't tell you on one screen it's going to rain, on another screen it's going to be sunny. So our forecast is the same.
That's a good start.
But the way you deliver it is different. So in mobile, you saw the tiles of Windows 8. So very early we partnered with them. We built an experience. You saw it on the screen. You heard discussions about weather connected to advertising. But it's specific to using what's beautiful and special about Windows. We have a different team that does one that works well with Android and a different team that works well with iOS. And I think this is important because it's more expensive this way, but if you don't use the technology and belong inside the operating system, it's not going to fully take advantage of it. So in effect, it's not even mobile. We have 3 very different mobile teams. They work together, but you need one for each operating system.
No, but that's the technology.
No, but the look and the feel and the interaction.
Yeah, but the content has to be, consistent.
Yeah, the content has to be consistent in terms of the forecast. I think the way you interact with it is quite different.
You do more than forecast, don't you?
Yeah, so when we tell a story, but they're done differently because the way you interact with the weather, the way you plan, the way it connects to your social networks, it's different. How much video you're going to consume and how you're going to consume video and the way the players work, they're different.
Okay. A lot of newsroom now are very also anxious to leverage, user-generated content, crowdsourcing. How do you do that? How useful is it for you? And what else can you do with crowdsourcing?
So we use crowdsourcing in a couple of ways. One, we've got this network of Wonderground people who put weather stations in their backyard. This is close to 30,000 people now. They send us the weather every 2.5 seconds. They also put webcams and they show us what's going on in their yard. Sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not. You should have an editor.
You need curation, right?
You need curation. So you've got that. And we have 1 million people, in an average week who will send us photos and videos. So we will use that to tell the story. I think newsrooms are really important from editing. Our new editor came from Huffington Post, who's very helpful, because there's also fraud. We had people who said the New York Stock Exchange had been flooded. They were tweeting this out. It wasn't true.
That's a very important...
It wasn't true. We had to check the fact, send someone to the New York Stock Exchange, see if it had really flooded. There were people who had, photoshops of sharks swimming in Hoboken. It wasn't true. So it's
no, but that's a very important point.
No, we have a job.
I saw on many platforms that one thing that shocked people is that during the what happened on the East Coast. A lot of information that they got on Twitter and it was wrong.
It was wrong.
And at times it's critical to you can't play with that kind of information.
But exactly. So this is why our sort of core Wonderground customers, Gary Schenberg's one of them. The people who really contribute do it scientifically, and we certify, so we know who to trust. I think you have to be very careful. I learned a lot of lessons in Sandy because people would just make stuff up. They wanted to be part of it, and they thought it was funny, but it wasn't funny. And
well, it can't be funny in those circumstances.
No, you really can't have humor or doctored photos.
Okay, so, and I heard that on that Monday or Monday, you had fantastic traffic and connections. And how do you monetize that? And which platform? Obviously, we heard and we know that television is still, very, very important. Not on vast majority of ad spend goes through TV channels, but the other side and mobile is growing fast, very fast. How is it for you as a channel? How do you see the evolution in the next 2 to 3 years?
So it's you separate it. So as I was saying, TV has two monetizations. So there's distribution fees and advertising. So that's why it works. In advertising, our audience is big. Our biggest audience is on mobile. Mobile plus the websites is over half of well over half of the audience, and well over half of the advertising. Okay. So the monetizations actually follows the audience.
Okay.
And I think that's important. The cable channels still need us for important moments like Sandy, but the digital channels are actually monetizing well. I think what's important in monetization is to sell data. So Sandy was good for us because we sell disaster futures, I guess is the best way to put it. So Generac, they make generators. They want to buy hurricanes. Home Depot, they want to buy hurricanes. Progressive Insurance, they want to buy hail.
I understand you have sliced in 36 segments.
There's 36.
Can you tell us a bit more about?
Well, that's even beyond the disaster. People who bought the big audiences then ramped up. It's like buying the Super Bowl. You just can't schedule it. Day to day, there are 36 weather parts: sunny, partly sunny, cloudy, mornings, afternoons, and so our best advertisers actually have different ads for different weather parts.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So it's and you saw some of the Nike stuff earlier. Nike wants to buy sunny weekend mornings. Match.com wants rainy afternoons because that's when people open new accounts, and insurance companies want to have predictions of severe. So I can sell any weather part, and smart advertisers kind of understand how weather affects their business. They also understand local, because all weather is local. We do 100,000 forecasts, so they buy very precise audiences versus mass.
That's it. By essence, you have a very local focused,
completely local. Everything
information.
We sell is local.
So you can really target to very local audience.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's local has evaded advertisers for a long time. It's been hard to do because in the analog world, you have to run around and buy lots of different properties. We in one place can deliver all of America locally, and we're getting close to a third of outside America, so we're building the audience globally. And there's a lot of advertisers who want to reach a very local audience.
But people are moving, obviously. So how do you use geo-localization?
So most people store the locations they care about, where they are and where they travel, on our apps. So you know because they gave it to you. And I would say, unlike other apps, 90% of the people who use our apps opt in to tell us the location. Because the weather's a lot more interesting if it knows where you are. Today I want to know the weather here. Tomorrow I want to know the weather in Paris. And Saturday back in Boston. So it's good that my phone knows where I am. I don't want all the apps to know it, but the weather app I trust.
Okay, another thing that is apparently happening these days is that when people are watching TV, traditional TV, they're also using other screens, smaller screens. And I don't know whether they are multitasking, probably yes. What do you think of the future of connected TV, and what does that mean for you?
Yeah, see, our delivery system is increasingly cloud-based, so it doesn't matter to us which screen. So people are multitasking, but they're also using at least the tablet as a TV. So during Sandy, because power went out, we had more people watching the Weather Channel television on tablets than normally watch it on television. Right, so there were 50 million video starts. So it was a huge. It was great until the batteries died.
Yeah.
So batteries are.
There was a problem with batteries.
Batteries are the next thing we have to solve in hardware, and I will leave that to Samsung and Apple and Amazon. But we have to solve the battery problem. But many people actually took their iPads into their cars, connected them to a recharger to watch.
But then there was a problem with the gas, right? And queues.
Yeah, well, that's the new problem. So there's always a problem in a hurricane. But if I go back, I would say, I think first of all, people are going to be more indifferent about screens. They'll have the video follow them around. I think we've got to get used to that because they want it to be portable. We see many people using multiple screens at the same time. So there are, for example, we have a lot of people who use weather and watch sports. And I think this is the other thing. You have to understand your media works with others because there's a lot of people who play fantasy football. And it turns out that some players are good in the mud and some people are good in the snow and some people only do well in nice days. And folks figure these statistics out and they use the weather forecast to pick their fantasy team while they're watching the game.
Wow. Okay. Now, is it time now to take a few questions from the floor?
If there are any.
Yeah? There's
Yes.
one here.
Good morning.
Wait for the microphone, please. So, your name and the question, please.
Name is Gilly, and the question is on the mobile side.
Yeah.
Could you tell how much traffic you get from apps versus browsers?
Yep. So apps have just passed the mobile browser. So it's about 60% app now. And it's a better experience on a smartphone. We still have mobile browser, particularly on lower end smartphones and feature phones around the world. But I would say the direction continues to be towards apps for us.
And in terms of, okay, we have 2 questions here, over there, please.
And one back
3.
there. Yeah. Okay, good.
Hi.
Good. Let's start.
Good
Ariel
morning.
from AppsFire. I wanted to, so weather is a wonderful category in the App Store and the Android Store. It's one of those categories where the more there is apps in this category, the more people download them. And every single month or week, you see a new bestseller into the weather category. Recently, Check the Weather, I don't know if you know this app, has been top paid app. I wanted to ask you, how is that affecting you? Do you see this flow of competition impacting the usage of your app? Does that force you to be more innovative? And how do you consider competition, or you just ignore it and you're king of the world and you can do whatever you want?
Are you the king of the world?
I wish, right? So it starts with the most important thing about weather is the forecast. So we invest in the science to make the forecast better. Because in the end, people go back to the apps that are most accurate. And we do track this every day, and we are the most accurate in 100,000 locations. So we start with that. I would say, secondly, we do actually have arrangements where we sell the data. So other people want to build a different interface off from our forecast. We're okay with that. So our B2B business actually has data streams. My next vision is actually to get all of those apps to put their inventory into one weather network. So if you want to buy rainy mornings, you buy it from me on 2,000 apps. So that's one. I would say secondly, though, our app is one of the top 5 on every platform of all time. So it's way ahead of the others in weather. And we do keep investing in our own experience because I do want to stay ahead of it. That said, it is a great category. People chase it, and we see folks come in, and I'm actually okay with that as long as they're using our data. And if they're not, they're going to be less accurate.
We had another question over there. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Oliver Rothschild from London. I was interested in your modesty about the economic and political power that your site has, and you really had to determine when you were going to issue your data before the terrible disaster. And that tool, I would like you to be less modest, how you edit yourselves as to when you're using that tool and how you work with other authorities. So if I were an advertiser or in the marketing business, it is so strong, it must be the strongest available, especially if a disaster like that is about to take place.
Yeah, so our first mission is to give people warning because that saves lives. And I think we take that mission very seriously. And at the same time, you don't want to create panic. I don't make the call. Nobody on the commercial side makes the call. The meteorologists make the call. And the meteorologists work together. They like to work well with people like the Met Office in the UK and the National Hurricane Center because you don't want to have confusion. In this case, there was a challenge in that there was never a hurricane warning issued in the US. And there was a good New York Times science story about what we went through to actually tell the message. And they were very precise that at the time it hit landfall, it would not be a hurricane. And there are reasons why they therefore didn't issue the warning. Our view is, but if it looks, smells, and feels like one and it's going to shred homes, you probably need to warn people. So in effect, we kind of went ahead of them and made it a big deal, and folks followed along. But it's a judgment call of the meteorologists really about life-saving as opposed to any commercial reason.
Okay, another question?
Hi, David. Jay Sears with the Rubicon Project.
Hi, Jay.
How are you? You made this analogy to Super Bowl
Right.
a minute ago, but kind of not scheduled.
Right.
So what does that mean in terms of how your negotiations with advertisers are different than other media owners, and how much of a role is programmatic in the solution you're delivering?
Yep. So it's.
Are you a premium media?
We are.
Do you charge more than others?
We are premium media, but programmatic can also earn premium. I think it's a big fallacy to say programmatic doesn't earn premium because it's bid up. So we had, I would say a couple of things. One, we had a tenfold increase, 1,000% increase in traffic. So yes, we had pre-sold things, no matter what. It wasn't all going to be sold. So we did put more inventory into programmatic, and we had bidding wars, and the programmatic prices went up. We couldn't stream everything on our own site. We also began to stream on the YouTube site, and we had a bidding war to sponsor that. So in effect, programmatic helps actually form the marketplace. People just had a matter of hours to get it done because the storm was coming. But I'm a big, listen, the stock market helps stocks go up and down. I think the same thing for programmatic. We personally think it builds a higher price for us in these moments.
We have one here and one at the back.
Oh, sorry, I can't see you, so I'm going to stand up. Hi, Shannon from Morpheus Media in New York. You mentioned that the good advertisers are the ones that are doing really well, or the ones that are actually creating custom ad units based on those 36 different weather types that you have, right?
Yep.
Are they also creating those in the mobile devices as well? So are they producing that level of depth of difference in their advertising? And what percentage of your advertisers are actually custom creating content or advertising for those segments?
So to be clear, that they're doing it for mobile first, because that's actually where you can be the most precise. And bringing it back to the PC experience, it's a little more difficult on television. And I would honestly, it's a handful. We believe there's about 30 advertisers right now we're working with. If of that, there's a dozen that are doing this, in our view, in a sophisticated way. It takes a real effort. And some businesses are much more affected by the weather than others. So I don't expect it to be all of them. But those advertisers will be a big percentage of our total ad revenues because they're the ones that are highly connected, and they're the ones, when people are thinking about the weather, their categories come to mind.
Gosh, here. We'll take probably the last two questions.
Steve Rosenbaum from Magnify in New York. Question about your career trajectory. There's been this sense that content was getting harder and harder to make a business out of. And so you went from agency to infrastructure at Akamai, and then obviously had a bunch of choices in front of you and chose content. Is it because Weather Channel is so unique and special, or do you think that there's actually a growing opportunity for content?
So first of all, I don't believe in planning the career too much because doors open. I love Digital House. I learned all I was going to learn there. Infrastructure, I think, is really valuable, and not everyone's going to go into it. but I do think too many media people don't understand the infrastructure. And if you don't get the tech, you're really going to get lost because it's changing quickly. So I was grateful to come off the board and do that for a year, but then to get back. And back to this content, listen, A, content's fun, and B, this particular content, we have such an advantage in that we do it better. So it's not just reporting news, it actually is forecasting. So I love the category. And I felt it was really underutilized. And I would say it wasn't just content, it was the local part. For all of my advertising career, struggled to do local well. And we're all waiting for Foursquare to build critical mass. And there are these local efforts, but the weather has most people organized by zip code already. So we should use it.
Mariana Danilovich, Hollywood Portfolio. The breakdown of your video content to your text-based content, if you'd like, through devices and online versus on television, and is bandwidth an issue both for live streaming and for storage?
Yep. So first of all, almost all our video is live, so we don't. Nobody really wants to see last week's weather forecast. So therefore, the storage is a little bit different than I think entertainment. All the television is video, of course. The mobile video is picking up very quickly. I would say it's still under a third of the interactions, but it's the fastest growing. And it's growing on both screens, both a phone and a tablet. And the web is picking up. We have insatiable demand from advertisers for video and much more from consumers than I expected. So we've increased our video assets 5-fold this year, and it all gets viewed and it all gets monetized. So I think people are eager for on-demand video. Our videos tend to be under 10 minutes, so they work really well on these screens. In terms of bandwidth, it's expensive, but we keep up. And I went back to, we had a 1,000-fold increase, so a 10-fold increase in demand. 50 million streams was huge for us. We didn't go down. That was partially, we've got a really good infrastructure. Partially it was Akamai, partially it was Amazon, partially it was Verizon. So I think it's important that you have your partners to be able to work with you on peak demands.